Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming. I think for the interest of those who may be watching us, we will introduce ourselves, please. So I'll start with myself. I'm Councillor Penny Jones, and I'm Chair of CYP Select.
And I'm Peter Farley. I'm the member for Chepstow St Mary's, and I'm the Vice Chair of this committee.
Good afternoon, I'm County Councillor Liz Hackett-Payne, Cabinet Member for Education and Learning.
Hazel Eilert, Scrutiny.
Richard Williams, Democratic Services Officer.
Will McLean, Head of Policy and Performance, Monmouthshire County Council.
Sarah McGuinness, Chief Officer for Children and Young People, Monmouthshire County Council.
Sharon Randall-Smith, Head of Service, Education.
Councillor Maureen Powell from Castle Ward, Abergavenny, and I'm a member of this committee.
Councillor Linda Guppy, a member of this committee, member for Roggett Ward, Monmouthshire.
David Jones, member of this committee and a member representing the Criconi Ward in North Monmouthshire.
Peter Clark, a committee member, a member for Llangibby Bower.
Roger Harris, committee member and a member for Cresson Ward in Abergavenny.
Mark Howcroft, Assistant Head of Finance for the Council.
Nikki Wellington, Finance Manager for Children and Young People. Claire Robbins, Programme Manager, Monmouthshire County Council.
Thank you all. Right, apologies for absence, please. Richard, Alder?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Webb, Blakeborough, also from Graham Murphy and Keith Plough.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. As and when? Do you think every... Okay, thank you.
I wasn't at the meeting, but on page 8, 12 of the bundle, it says the committee were informed that 100% of schools did not respond. Is that right? So,
I don't recall that. No, I don't recall that.
That's what it's in the minutes. So,
yes, you're
you know,
right.
not
Well
being
done.
there, I thought that
Yes.
is weird.
It does then say that the number of responses received may be dependent on how they were challenged. No, it's not. I don't recall 100%. We will check that. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Do members agree that I can sign these minutes?
Yeah, move, Chairman.
Hello and welcome to our committee. Could you introduce yourself, please, and
Yes.
then you can speak.
I'm Angela Lloyd, the grandparent of a child in the Special Needs Department in Derry View in Abergavenny. I've come today because there are rumours of all sorts going around the Derry View in Abergavenny that the special needs unit there is going to close in July. I don't know whether it's true, but it's certainly what is going around the school. So knowing then that there are obviously budget cuts and things within the council, what I would like to know is to have some confirmation of what proposals, if any, there are regarding the special needs in Derry View. If they have already been made, what they are. If they haven't already been made, when are they likely to be made? And when are the parents going to be informed of their choices? Because obviously these are, although a very small group of children, they are some of the most vulnerable in the county.
Thank you very much. So that's very good. The Cabinet member, Councillor Hackett-Payne, will answer you now.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming today and bringing that question to us. And I'm sorry if I didn't quite catch at the beginning. Did you say you had a child in Derry View? A grandchild. Thank you very much. Because I'm just trying to find, a letter was sent out to all parents, and I'm not quite sure whether it was all parents in the school or all parents who certainly used the special educational resource base. So a letter was sent out from the head teacher, and I'm just trying to find that letter, explaining what was going to happen. At the moment, there's a consultation process taking place, and as an authority, we're looking at the needs of children with special educational needs in the county, and Derry View are one of those facilities that are being looked at. If I could actually find the letter, I could read it out to you. Let me just see if anybody else has anything to add.
Ms Lloyd, I just say that we're part of a consultation process, that it's one aspect. It certainly isn't definitive. It certainly hasn't been decided.
No, it hasn't.
It's all under consultation, and it's one aspect of it. So, there's no closures imminent. Everybody would be. Have you got it now?
Shall I read the letter out? And it says, Dear parent or carer, and this is from the head teacher, I'm writing to make you aware of Monmouthshire County Council's proposals to review provision for additional learning needs across Monmouthshire, to include the possible closure of the special needs resource base at Derry View. So it says possible closure there. This is a proposal and is subject to a 6-week period of consultation in which you are able to engage. Despite what you may read on social media, our governing body have been consulted on the proposal. As this proposal only went before a meeting on Monmouthshire County Council on Thursday, January the 22nd. I am, however, confident that Cabinet Member Councillor Hackett-Payne and officers of Monmouthshire Council will make an informed decision once all representation has been submitted to them. And it also says, I can assure you that the governors of the school would not support any proposal that did not support our aspirations to improve learner outcomes by providing an excellent education for all the children. So, consultation period is going on. I'm not quite sure when it finishes, and you have a chance then to put your views to the school or to anybody else you wish to within the authority. So at the moment it is a proposal there, and the proposal is to look at the closure, but no decision has been made yet. And I think and again, it's very difficult because it is a sensitive matter, and I don't want to discuss individual children because that would be incredibly wrong to do. But there are quite a small number of children, I think it's about between 14 and 18, in that base at Derry View. And I think the majority of those parents are quite happy with extra support for them to be taught in mainstream schooling. So I think that is what is being looked at present.
Councillor Harris.
Just to say, Chair, that I need to declare a non-prejudicial interest as being a governor of Derry View School.
Also, I have to declare the same.
Thank you. Do the officers have anything to add to this lady's query?
Thank you so much for bringing it up, Mrs Lloyd, and it is a very sensitive area and we're all very aware of that. We're also very aware that rumours don't help anyone, and what we pride ourselves on here is transparency. We are now in a consultation process which gives everyone an opportunity to contribute to the consultation, and I can assure you that anything you do contribute would be taken very seriously. We are looking at provision for additional learning needs across our authority, not only in Abergavenny and certainly not only in Derry View. So this comprises part of a very wide consultation process on additional learning needs. Okay.
Yes, that's what I wanted to emphasise, that it isn't just Derry View that's being looked at, it's all aspects and whether they're conjoined or moved or whatever. So it's just one aspect. Would you like to come back, Mrs Lloyd?
Yes, just to say then really that so the 6-week consultation period has started. So was that as of the 22nd of January? Is that the date of the meeting you gave me? Was the
Yes, the letter went out on the 26th of January, so that went out to parents.
Right. So the best thing for parents to do then is to write in to then with any comments on how it would affect them.
And they will be taken into consideration at the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Lloyd, for being here.
Chair,
yes,
just
Councillor Guppy.
they could write in, but they could also get hold of their local governors or the parent governors, who they could, you know, put their views across if anybody feels that they don't want to write and they want to do it via somebody else.
Have
or
you
the school itself, really, just to open it up a bit wider.
Yes, good point, Councillor Guppy. Good point. Have you spoken to the governors in your school, or?
Well, I haven't directly, but basically the reason that I've come today rather than my daughter coming today, because this is the time that they're picking him up from school. And so I could come to this meeting, and obviously the parents themselves couldn't. And so I've sort of come
But you can certainly
to,
ask, you know, to be represented. All right. Okay, thank you. Would you like to stay, or would you like to? I'm sure you'd rather go. Yes, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This self-evaluation update focuses specifically on recommendation 6 of the post-inspection action plan following Monmouthshire's inspection in November 2012. Recommendation 6 focuses on performance management, and we are also aware that we will, as well as looking at performance management, Estin, when they visit us in on the 2nd of March onwards, we'll be looking specifically at Annex B of our post-inspection action plan, which comprises inclusion, ALN and the youth service. Therefore, this self-evaluation focuses specifically on those areas. We have included recommendations 1 to 5 as reminders of the other 5 recommendations in the post-inspection action plan. But recommendation 6 is that the key issues to address in recommendation 6 are that Estin found when they visited Monmouthshire in 2012 that although the authority had a performance management policy, the authority were not effective in securing improvements, and the key issues were process is not consistently implemented within CYP Directorate, Leaders and managers were not always able to direct staff effectively and hold them to account, and systems lacked coherence and weren't always sufficiently linked to strategic corporate policies. It's specifically those areas that have been focused upon and improved in that time frame. This self-evaluation speaks for itself. I'm certainly not going to speak to every line in it, but effectively what it does cover are the improvements that have been made as part of performance management generally, including the check-in, check-out process for all officers. Also includes performance management specific to the areas of additional learning needs and inclusion and our youth service, and it does also include information around the political process that has driven improvements in this area and in all areas, of course, in CYP. But at this stage, I would like to propose an addendum to this document as it stands. There is one aspect of it that I would like to enhance, and that is the area around political process, so that we are absolutely clear and are not selling ourselves short, in fact, in relation to the immense amount of excellent work that's gone on in relation to improving the performance management system. So I have, with your indulgence, Chair, asked my colleague Will McLean to come along, Head of Policy and Performance, to speak to that addendum, if that's within my gift.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Will, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I think one of the pieces which Sarah has said that needs to be drawn out more in the self-evaluation, which we will do following this meeting, hopefully, is the piece which is around the political oversight, which is a critical part of any performance management process. And I think, exactly as has been said, it is extensive, and it has become even more extensive, I think. And there are just a few facets that I'd like to draw out, really. I think if we start with the chief officer executive member relationship in the first instance, that has a regular and frequent meeting cycle at which key issues and points of discussion are held. Those are recorded properly, and that's a key mechanism by which an executive leader is able to hold the chief officers to account. We also have within Monmouthshire an internal monitoring board which is set up at the same time as we had the Ministerial Recovery Board put in place. That internal monitoring board is made up of a leader or representative of every political group within the council, and that receives all of the papers that go to the Ministerial Recovery Board. So that group is really important in the terms that it receives those papers, it makes a judgment about whether they're appropriate or not to go forward, and has those discussions. And that often means them seeing some of those kind of challenging items earlier than other members. To make sure we close that off, every single set of minutes from the Internal Monitoring Board come to full council, where they're scrutinised at full council, and certainly I've been party to those council meetings where they've prompted quite significant amounts of debate and question when items are drawn to the members' attention. So that's an important part. With regards to the MRB, which is kind of with us temporarily, hopefully not for a huge amount longer, but with regards to the Ministerial Recovery Board, the chair has been to a full member seminar to update members on where he thinks the authority is in terms of its recovery process and agenda. And I know that he's committed to come back in the near future again to update all members. And I think the next time we will try and do that on a council day as opposed to having it as a full seminar, as that kind of normally ensures that we have a higher level of attendance. But I think more broadly, there is a huge amount of data around school performance, be that the children being in school, being in school and behaving, and being in school and attaining, if those are the three kind of key parts of education we're looking at. And all of that data is available to all officers and members on the hub in great detail, both comparatively compared to previous years and to other organisations. So that's there for everybody to look at any given point. And obviously, in terms of other parts of the structure we have, Sarah brings her Chief Officer report to full council to be challenged. And that is a really important point of self-evaluation and reflection on the previous year, and in the point at which Sarah sets out her plans for the future year. And I think that coming to full council is a key marker for councillors and for Sarah and for the assessment processes and the appraisal processes internally about how we manage and hold to account for achieving those goals which are set out there. And of course, alongside all of that work undertaken by the officers and the executive member, there is a huge amount of work done through the body of this committee itself. So, you know, the work that you have taken in the past year, looking at standards, looking at comparative standards to similar schools and so on, for those at specific groups within our school communities, to the way that we provide school. We look forward to our 21st century provision, the work that you've done there to look and assess that. And of course, some of the policy development work which you've been undertaking, such as the considerations about how we provide additional learning needs support to our children. So between Select, the executive member's role, the role that full council plays at those crucial points, we can see very clearly a marked step up in terms of political involvement in how we hold the education service to account.
Thank you, Will. Sarah, would you like to carry on?
Thanks very much, and thanks, Will, for coming to speak too. I value very much Will's insert, because I think this will give clarity in terms of the crucial cross-directorate relationship when it comes to particularly this aspect of the post-inspection action plan. I do think it's worth reminding ourselves that it is CYP indeed that is being inspected by Estin, but that the issues arising from that needed a great deal of support and liaison with other directorates, which we are now confident we work very well at and with. So I think what's left for me to say is that the self-evaluation is a wealth of information. You are very welcome now, and I will ask you politely to be to ask any questions you wish on this, and I would open a discussion on it if that's agreeable.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Before you go on, there are some pages with annotations on, and these will not be part of the final draft. I'd just like to point that out. Okay? Thank you, Will. You have to go, I do understand. Any questions? Yes. Councillor Harris, followed by Councillor Guppy.
Thank you, Chair. Will read out a quite a long list of consultees and where information can be found, for example, on the hub, and information going to full council and here. But if you look at the consultees of this report, it's got everyone apart from the chair of children and young people. And I just find it strange that we have select committee chairs and they're very rarely, if at all, on the consultees list. And I really don't understand that.
Can I just say, as committee chair, sorry, I didn't hear all your question. I am part of the internal monitoring board. So, is that what you were talking about? That part of the follow through. So, also, as a chair and vice chair, we're both involved. I think we'll be part of the Welsh Audit Office committee. So we haven't had that yet. We don't know what format it takes exactly, but it's with other local authorities. So we are involved in the background, but not with everything.
So it could be on here, chair of CYP as a member of the monitoring board. So you'd actually be mentioned, so we know that you know, if you know what I mean, because it's important. Yes. Thank you.
I agree. Yes, we tend to be the poor relation in this. But yes, I am part of it. Okay, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, it's just trying to take the report as it's presented, really. And I know that it's we're dealing with recommendation 6, but just in the introduction with recommendation 1, I just wondered that it needs to be padded out a little bit. For example, in recommendation 2 and 3, they give examples of what has been done. It says review and strengthen, but I don't know if it needs to be padded out a bit other than just one sentence as a summary of the other recommendations have, because this is so significant, safeguarding, that's all. But I'm not quite sure if that would be yourself that would add that, or somebody else.
Thank you, and that's noted. I can see the point you're making. That certainly would be, again, an example of cross-directorate, cross-group working, and we can take that on board and ensure that that's done before its next outing to Cabinet. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Guppy.
Councillor Farley.
Thank you, and thank you, Sarah. There's some very helpful things in here. But I wonder if I could ask a basic question, which just shows how long it is since I've been involved in things like this. So I'd like to take you and anybody following this to page 5. I think it's page 5, which is right at the opening of the key issues, recommendation 6, performance management, which is basically the heart of this report, really, isn't it? Great deal of mention is made of check-in and check-out, which sounds wonderful. How does it actually work? What do you do when you check in and check out? Could you enlighten me?
Before you, it's page 5, page 29 of the hard copy. Okay.
I do. Thank you for the question, Councillor Farley. I'm going to actually ask my colleague Sharon Randall-Smith to respond to this question. Check-in, check-out is a performance management tool used across the council, but Sharon, as a manager of a team, would probably give you very clear examples of exactly how she would use it, which I think would probably be much more helpful.
Sharon, thank you.
The process of check-in, check-out involves line managers sitting with their colleagues to look at not just the targets that are contained within their service improvement plans, but although that does form part of the conversation, but really what good would look like in their role across different aspects of their role. So the way in which they work together, the way in which they demonstrate the good practice in their role to others, and how that disseminates through the team. It's a very in-depth and detailed conversation, and it enables us not to just look and focus on targets, but how to, develop our skills holistically as individuals, as leaders across a team, in order to move the whole of CYP forward. So it's quite an in-depth process. It is quite detailed, and we revisit it then through the year when we look at targets. So in one-to-ones, you may well pick up something within the check-in, check-out. So it might be to become a little bit more resilient in certain circumstances, and you might pick that up and say, well, and how's that going? What have you done about it? What other support do you need? As well as how are you doing with regard to these particular targets? So it's a holistic process rather than just a focus on the end outcome, and it takes into account the personal development as well.
Sarah would like to come in on it then as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon, because that gives a very good example of check-in, check-out with teams as well as individuals. But to add to that, I also carry out performance appraisals with heads of service. So heads Sharon Randall-Smith, Deb Mountfield, Simon Neefsey, who in turn carry out their appraisals with their teams. Those appraisals would be very high level and will also be revisited during the year. In fact, we are revisiting heads of service appraisals next week. So that also is part of the check-in, check-out process. I hope that helps Councillor Farley to clarify what check-in, check-out is.
It is indeed very helpful, and so just so that I can completely understand, this is a process which is fully known about and prepared for, understood, trained for by all participants, whether it's one-to-one or an individual manager with a team. So it is in fact a sophisticated process. It's not just another fancy label for a normal ongoing supervision or appraisal type meeting midway through a year.
CYP were the first directorate really to receive training for all managers. It was a very large training session. We spent a day looking at that collectively as a whole, and I believe that we've been the first directorate to implement this from the beginning of the last financial year. So we're coming towards the end of our first year now, and we'll be at the stage where we evaluate the effectiveness of this new process.
I can't help thinking, Chair, that elements of this process might be useful for us as councillors when we look at our own appraisals and self-appraisals.
Yes. Something we could look into. That's a good idea. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also noted the check-in, check-out procedure. And so I gather from you that it's being rolled out across the whole of the county. Now, in all honesty, and I know I'm going public here, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, I don't know really very much, if anything at all, about the process. And I think if we're to scrutinise the results of what come from check-in, check-out, it would be rather good if we had some sort of briefing session on how and how well it's working and how much it's greatly improved the performance. Because if you look at the bullet points on page 6, it looks like we had quite a way to go, and this is obviously doing something significant towards getting us to where we want to be. And so that we actually know what you're talking about, it would be rather good to have a bit more in-depth info, if that's possible.
Is that possible? Anybody, do you think we could have a...
That's certainly possible, I'm sure, but I also am sure that it's the result of the next Estin revisit that would give you your most fundamental information on whether this is an effective system or not. But it is a system that's embedded across the authority. Sharon's quite right. We were the first directorate to embed it for obvious reasons, but Estin will give a really good flavour of whether that's efficient. But I can take that back and certainly take that back to the core to consider rolling that out as training for members.
The only thing there, Chair, looking negatively, which I'm sure won't be the case, if Estin says it's not working, we don't know why it's not working because we don't know how it should be working in the first place, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do understand. I also note, Sarah, that the full evaluation of the impact will be carried out at the end of the first cycle in September. So that would be the obvious time to ask you to come back following that to scrutiny, so we can see the full impact. Prior to that, perhaps we could have a briefing of some sort, even if it's an email of some sort sent out to us with a briefing of its content. Any other questions regarding any part, you know, the ALN, the inclusion, exclusion, youth services? Councillor Guppy.
Yep, on page 34, really, point 5, the increase in the amount of training for teachers and teaching assistants in regard to ASD-friendly schools. It's got the figures here for 2014, 2015, that these figures have stayed the same, although there is an increase in the Early Bird Plus training of staff. I just wondered why there is only 17 schools that have received this training, and do we not need to get this training out to all schools? And is there a reason behind these figures that look like they're static, that this is definitely an area that all schools will benefit?
Schools are invited to attend the training, and where possible we will work with them to be able to meet that request and encourage schools that we know would benefit from the training particularly to become involved. And we do identify and recognise that we are working towards 100% of schools actually going through this training. So we can't train everyone for everything all the time, so we go through a programme whereby we try to address the schools that are in need at that particular time and those that come online as we can anticipate it. So it's not that training will finish, it's not that training has stopped at the moment, but that's where we are currently with our number of schools that have been trained.
Sarah.
I just think it's worth noting, Chair, as well, that the 17 schools you refer to, you're quite right, the numbers are the same, but they're not necessarily the same schools.
Would it be benefit for that to be clarified then in the report, because because it says total. So that doesn't represent a total then if it's...
It represents a total for that year. So you're quite right, we can clarify it. And if that isn't clear to you, then that's precisely what this process is for, and thank you for pointing it out.
Okay.
Majority of schools will have children that they've identified with ASD and they would need, they have requested support, but some schools are being very proactive in the way in which they're building capacity within their schools, and therefore it's not necessarily that. Hence, our desire to ensure that all schools are trained over time.
And just an addition, Sharon's quite rightly said schools are proactive in their choice of training, but we do know that at certain during the career of a cycle, 7-year cycle of a primary school, for example, it is highly likely that there will be children with on the autistic spectrum disorder who are admitted to that school.
On the subject of clarity, I'd like to just ask on page 39 or page 15 of this report, Monmouthshire LAC attendance, there is a grid there. I would just like, it isn't very clear. In fact, in the pre-meeting, we had some discussion about what the percentage was and what the total of schools were. And I just wondered, could the actual numbers of the pupils be put there? Perhaps that would help the percentage one.
Yes, absolutely. Again, thank you for raising it, because until fresh eyes look at things like this, sometimes these points aren't picked up. This is our currency, I suppose. So thank you. We'll certainly do that.
Councillor Jones, did you have a question about exclusion?
Yes, I did.
It is fair to assume that behaviour is improving, and we work very hard across the whole of our authority and all of our schools to ensure the behaviour management is improving all of the time. The expert on this is sitting behind you, and I'm going to invite him to join in this conversation.
At this point, I would just like to welcome, because for the benefit of viewers, Tracy Jels from Children's Services and Richard Austin from School Improvement. Thank you. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the exclusion figures, as Sarah said, they've fallen dramatically in Monmouthshire over the last few years. That's down to the hard work of schools. They've enhanced their capacity. It's also down to the work of the Pupil Referral Service, who support young people who are at risk of exclusion. We try to engage the young people prior to permanent exclusion. We've had 3 permanent exclusions in Monmouthshire in the last 6 years. We're very, very proud of that figure. And they were all as a result of parents wishing to appeal. We can't deny them the right of appeal, and they wanted to do that. So our fixed-term exclusions have fallen. We try to be very, very proactive. There's also a tremendous amount of work going on, as I said, in schools, especially in the Monmouthshire cluster, about the Restorative Approaches project, and that's had a significant impact on their exclusion figures. Their exclusion figures in that school are negligible. So I think in some areas we can definitely say that behaviour is improving, but also that we're enhancing the capacity of our schools.
All right, Councillor Gent. Okay. Councillor Farley. Sorry. And then Councillor Moring-Powell.
Sure. Thank you. Not very far away from what we've just looked at, page 18 of the report, page 42 of the bundle, below the table, Gypsy Traveller pupils. How are these actually defined? And as a second question, is this actually the right terminology? I thought there was a great deal of legislative background to this nomenclature, and I'm not sure, I need to be reminded, whether gypsy traveller is actually the right term, simply because not all gypsies are travellers and not all travellers are gypsies. So who are we talking about here?
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, that's another one of my areas. They're defined by the PLASC return, and we have very low numbers in Monmouthshire. At the 2014 PLASC return, we had 4 who identified themselves as Gypsy Traveller Heritage. That's the correct terminology that Welsh Government uses. The travellers in Monmouthshire are live in homes, so they're not technically travellers, but they are determined as gypsy travellers by their heritage, and that's what the parents want.
So there's no other travelling children involved in any of this? This is strictly the group that you've just described?
Yes, earlier this year we did have there were I think several families of travellers that came in and resided in the Abergavenny area in the car park, and if they stayed we would have then had to provide educational provision for them, but they moved pretty quickly. So we haven't got any travelling families. We sometimes may get them if the fare arrives, and then we provide provision.
Thank you very much. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chairman. Going now on to page 20 of the report, page 44 of the bundle, youth support services. Paragraph 1, making better use of the data. If you go to the end of the first paragraph, it's got a sentence, work to evaluate overall outcomes is planned to be completed by the end of the financial year 2014-15. Will it be possible for this work to be ready for scrutiny by the end of May?
Yes, it states that it will, and it certainly will.
And it does look like it's going to be.
Yes, certainly.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, this question was asked, I presume, because the youth services is due in May anyway, so this could be added to that. Well, thank you. That's lovely. Thank you, Councillor Powell. Regarding this self-evaluation. No, then thank you very much. I'd like to thank Sarah and Sharon for the reports. It will be interesting regarding the heads of services work plans and the challenges per se to have you back to review after the cycle has been the reviews have been carried out in September 15, and this will evaluate the effectiveness of the new appraisal system process and the impact it has on strategic outcomes, hopefully. So we look forward to that. So thank you very much for coming today. The next item on the agenda is CYP performance summary. And Sharon, I think this is going to be you, isn't it? You have actually written this report. And the purpose of the report is to inform members of the judgments made in 2013-14 by the Eston inspection team. The committee should review the impact of the education EAS and to ensure improved outcome for pupils. Now, we've had quite a lot of conflab about this in our pre-meeting. It is a fairly negative report in that it is a bit outdated. And perhaps there should be something in the front, because you see, we have an understanding of that, but anybody reading this from the member of the public would not realise it was outdated. And for instance, I'm just going to give you an example. On page 1, which is, just says page 1 of the bundle, so page 47, sorry, I've covered it in my own writing. 3.4 at the bottom of the page, it says a proportion of judgments in the following quality indicators: standards, learning, experiences, leadership, quality improvement and resource management are significantly lower in Monmouthshire compared to Wales overall. And that's repeated later on in 527. So it's fairly like that throughout the report, which is quite depressing reading on the whole. But then we come to a totally different report on page 103. I expect you recognise this, Mark. And it says in 4.6, in 2014, on page 103 this is, in 2014, the percentage of children with 5 or more GCSEs, including English and mathematics, increased from 57 to 65%, and is understood to be the highest reported performance in Wales, which is a fairly optimistic statement and one that heartens a lot of people. And to have this result would indicate that you have good teaching practices, good teaching resources, and so on in place, which this report doesn't seem to do. So I would like perhaps a request in future that we can perhaps put in an introduction which says this is an out-of-date or slightly out-of-date report. Okay, thank you, Sharon. You're going to go.
The report, quite rightly, as you say, is based on historical data compared to data that is released very recently, in fact, pretty much a few days before the report was submitted to you following Estin's annual report. The data that's now contained within the annual report in Estin has changed over the years, and it now reflects all settings. So the percentages that are reflected are, again, across a lot of settings rather than just the schools we have. So, for example, you may have further education, you may have special schools, you'll have primary schools and secondary schools, and special schools have been doing particularly well in Estin outcomes. We only have one in Monmouthshire, and that one hasn't been inspected. So it's not an exact science. The report, the intention of the report was to provide facts for you to consider in the light of what is available comparatively with Wales. But I do take your point. An introduction, if that will help, would certainly, be helpful in the future, and I will reflect on that absolutely.
Yes, Sarah would like to comment.
Thank you. Just to interject really briefly, because Sharon is going to take us through this.
Yes.
But the other thing to note is that this is a report that differs from the financial report, obviously, that Chair, you referred to. Equally, we're very keen to ensure that members are absolutely clear about the position of this county and this county schools by comparison. I completely take on board that there needs to be a caveat in here that explains this is historical information, and we will certainly do that. In fact, Sharon and I had a very similar conversation about 5 minutes before we came into the chamber. But equally, I want to be clear that we are presenting information to members that is real, that is transparent, and we are very happy to explain any of it. I do not want to present information with constant positive spin that would be leading you down the garden path. That isn't to say that Monmouthshire isn't doing well, because it is, and our schools are doing well, and last summer's results were excellent, and I have every confidence that this summer's will be too. But just for clarity, we will present information that is absolutely crystal clear. But thank you very much for asking us to clarify the historical nature of the information. We will do that.
Yeah, I think that was our point. We do recognise that these are totally relevant. This is totally relevant detail, and it must be gone through. But that there is a more positive aspect as well, and I think that's what we were trying to say. But thank you, Shannon. Do carry on.
As we have, agreed, this is historical information, and we have to remember that schools that are included in Monmouthshire outcomes, overall outcomes, some of them were inspected from September 2010, and things certainly have moved on significantly. But as far as Estin is concerned, your last inspection is the one that is recorded in here. And similarly, our schools that have gone into follow-up or into a category have been removed from either local authority or Estin monitoring, or even where they've been in significant improvement, been removed within the first visit. So that's a year, around about a year after the date of publication. Those figures are better than Wales as a whole, overall. And if you, in the last report, the number of schools going into some sort of monitoring is around about 2/3 of all primary schools, for example. So comparatively, Monmouthshire in that way is comparable and doing quite well. And the fact is that when we know that there are things that need to be done, we are doing them, and we are obviously well on the way, because schools are being removed from a category or from monitoring within that short period of time. Similarly, we know our schools going forward. Categorisation for all of our schools has been published nationally. The schools that are amber and that are red have very, very specific support and intervention plans in place in order to help them move forward. We know exactly the input that the EAS are giving into all our schools and the impact that that is having over time, and also where we expect to be within 12 months from this point with regard to categorisation. And that in itself feeds into the work that's being done. So in many ways, this is not a reflective picture necessarily of where we are at this minute in time. It doesn't include any of the schools that were inspected from September 2014. And it doesn't take into account the fact that schools have been removed would now be judged to be at least adequate or good, depending on, you know, when they've been removed from monitoring. And therefore, it is a statement of fact at this snapshot in time, rather than, you know, saying exactly what it is.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Harris, followed by Councillor Clark.
What we needed, Sharon, was your explanation that
Yes.
you just given us, bolted on the back of it.
Yes.
We really would like that, because somebody looking at this page 1 in isolation would say, good God.
Yeah.
You know, they really
It's
would.
depressing.
But with your explanation, from, you know, we note this, we were terrible, according to some of these, but we're a lot better now. And, you know, do yourself a favour, do us all a favour.
Absolutely, I fully accept that, and I will learn from the experience.
Thank you. Sarah, would you like to come in on this before Councillor Clark?
Thank you. I just very briefly, Sharon is my natural pessimistic colleague, you see. No, I'm joking, but she does keep us all on the straight and narrow, and she states fact. She's a scientist at heart, I think. But that is, I just want to add, though, that we should note there still is a long way to go in terms of raising our profile to meet the Welsh profile. Now, that's, yes, we do have fewer schools in many counties, but nevertheless, there is room for improvement. But we are on a journey of improvement. It's going in the right direction all of the time.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. On paragraph 5.9, third line down, it says the improvement has remained at 5%, 14 schools. Now, I think we've only got 40-odd schools in this county, and 5% of that would be 2 or 3. Or, if 5% is right, we've got 280 schools. One of those figures is wrong.
5.9, we're talking about overall figures for Wales.
Ah, now that, you see, now we've read this, you see, as Monmouthshire. As we are Monmouthshire County Council.
5.9 covers the follow-up activity for Estin as a whole, and that's a very new statistic.
Can you write Estin as a whole in there?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Or overall Wales?
Absolutely.
Really threw me over us. I thought we got more schools than I knew about.
Right. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Right. Sharon, have you finished? Or not? Or you did you stop for the questions? I don't know. Sorry. Well, thank you very much. I hope you understand it was constructive criticism in the light that the public see this. It's a public document, and their perception may be entirely different from ours. So we realise there's a lot of work to do. We will be scrutinising that, obviously, as well. But we are glad that it's not really a reflective picture. It does not include the schools involved in 2014 inspection. So thank you very much for that. And, you know, and if in future that can be clarified, it would be very helpful. All right. Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you. Right, next item on the agenda is item 7, which is to scrutinise the revenue monitoring. I think, Mark, are you going to come down and join us? 2014-15, month 9, outturned forecast statement. And this purpose is to provide members of the authority's position at with the authority's position at the end of month 9. We can consider how services are provided and whether resources are being utilised effectively. So I don't know, is it Mark who's going to present this, or? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
What we'll do, Chair, is that we'll double or triple team it alongside Tracy in terms of I'll provide an overview to the services, and if there's any specific questions in relation to services specifically, then Nikki, Sarah or Tracy will be able to help you.
Thank you very much.
Right. This is largely the same report that Cabinet saw last week. So just taking you through the holistic position for the Council, which is always useful to have in the back of your mind before we get into the children and young people select appendices specifically. As of month 9, we're anticipating that if everything stayed the same, that we'd incur a £144,000 deficit at the end of the financial year. That's a slight worsening on the month 6 position. There are some very good reasons for that, and actually, it's nice not to be the main pessimist in the room in comparison to Sharon there. But actually, that outturn covers 2 factors. There is about £500,000 worth of redundancy costs included in that, which wouldn't be a budgeted item by definition. And it also includes about £500,000 worth of savings that was predicated on the 2014-15 budget process that have yet to be made. So if you think there's about £1 million worth of volatility before you even look at the bottom line, and you could expect that if everything worked as a Swiss watch, we'd be £1 million adrift, but we're not. We're only 144,000 adrift. Symptomatic of month 3 and month 6, there are pressures exhibited within social care and health, predominantly in the children's area, and perhaps Tracy can give some clarification as to what those are. They will be very much the same trends that you've experienced previously at month 6 around looked after children, costs of provision, the legal framework that underpins all that. Very justifiable reasons, and one of the things that you voted on in terms of setting the budget for next year was to realign your resources and priorities to provide social care with some additional resources to actually mitigate that. So we are trying where possible to provide a more realistic budget for children's services. That means that in future occasions we won't actually be reporting the extent of variances against to the extent that we are doing at the moment. So if we go down to paragraph 3.19, that on a red and green basis tells you which of the more significant variances, both favourable and adverse, obviously green being favourable, red being adverse, and a little bit of the headline cause to them. I mean, clearly, if you want to explore any of those details, the officers are here to give you a bit of background, but it just gives you an understanding of where it's moved since the month 6 position. In terms of schools and school balances, the situation presenting itself at month 9 is slightly better than the situation that was presented at month 6. Actually, schools suggest that they'll be using 84,000 less resources than they predicted doing it at month 6. I think the outturn probably will be different again. We generally find that there's quite a bit of activity in the last quarter that schools look at what resources they've paid for out of their general budgets as opposed to what they've paid for out of improvement grants, and there's quite a bit of movement between one and the other. But actually that's the situation at month 9 is a more encouraging prospect than previously reported. The situation should remain on the radar because obviously you'll be aware that that going forward we are expecting schools to pay for their pay awards and teachers' pension costs, and at the moment schools are looking to provide their budgets and working through how they're going to work that in practice. Obviously, the level of reserves is at such a level now that it wouldn't sustain the same level of commitment as they have been used to previously. And obviously, that flexibility to use balances isn't necessarily there as it has been in the past. We spoke briefly about 3.3 and the fact that the savings progress against mandates exhibits very encouragingly £500,000 swing since month 6, but still leaves £500,000 worth of savings that the budget is predicated on still to be made, and then goes into some detail as to where those variances are and what's being done about it. What we actually did at month 6 was we actually took a review that where savings were being made in alternate places in the departments, and that was actually assured that we actually vied some of those savings across in a more transparent and formal fashion. And I suspect that will be a flavour of going forward with these things. But 3.3.3 indicates those savings that where the progress is, it still needs to be made. So if I move you on to Appendix 1 then, actually just remind you of what the original mandate was and the nature of it if you wanted to look at the detail of that. I'm not proposing to go through it, but I'll answer any questions on it if that's okay with you. And I'll move straight to Appendix 5, which is the social care and, children and young people select appendices, which I believe is page 98 in your bundle. 99, okay.
Yep, thank you.
So you can see in more detail there in section 1 the breakdown of the various service department budgets, whether there's been any environments that have been going on, what the likely forecast outturn is. 1.2 then explains the situation in terms of the swing since the last quarter, and provides a headline cause to it. What I probably ought to do is recognise that there's actually more green in there than has been the case historically in relation to social care children. Obviously, that's being offset by the worsening position around looked after children and the extent of the cost challenges that we're facing there. Similarly for children and young people, there are 2 services which exhibit a favourable situation and 2 which exhibit an adverse. Unfortunately, the adverse situation outweighs the favourable one at the moment to agree with the £92,000 deficit, but there's an explanation as to why that would be. Part 2 indicates the savings progress that's specific to this committee, of which social care children's services are expecting to make half of their savings, and children and young people 669 of 722. Both of those exhibit no real change since month 6. Then we get into the detail of schools reserves, which shows you on an individual basis where the schools are. And I do apologise for the smallness of the print. I will try to make that better for next time. But the overall message is one that the situation at month 9 is better than was predicted at month 6. It still remains a concern because the level of school balances is such that it wouldn't allow for the same historic level of funding from that source as previously. And obviously we're still to receive the detailed budget proposals from individual schools yet on which to have a confidence as to their usage for next year. Performance management, this is I was going to say a new feature to the report. It seems that there's a new feature to the report every quarter I come here. it would be fair to say that in bringing the monitoring forward by a month, actually the nature and superficial aspect of some of the interrogation here is one that I would want to go away and actually have a look at in more detail to understand the situation, because, as you know from previously, I'm an inherently nosy individual.
Research.
Okay. The one point I'd probably highlight to you there is around the number of looked after children. These figures are figures that you would have received elsewhere in relation to the council's corporate monitoring, and what we're trying to do there is to try to more closely link activity to finance. I don't think it particularly works in a number of areas, and one of the areas I don't think works particularly well is around looked after children. You might look at that to say, well, there's very little volatility in terms of the number of cases and the activities on a year-by-year basis. What I would say is that that's a snapshot at a particular point in time. It doesn't evidence the sophistication around people dropping in and dropping out and the proportionate amount of care that people bear during the year. So I'm trying to work with my accounting colleagues in SCH to see whether we can come up with a full year equivalent that might be a better measure that will allow us to see the extent of more expensive cases or the extent of activity in a more transparent fashion than I'm able to show it at the moment. The next couple of tables are the ones related to school provision and CYP. Obviously, the first table about budgets is something that's very regularly mentioned in the finance report and always has done, so that's not really a refinement to it. What I would say in light of your conversation that you had earlier around school attainment, I think when I look to provide these benchmarking information, part of the challenge is actually getting the information in the first place. I mean, the Key Stage 4 information is all externally moderated. It's generally available after the primary school information. So that's one reason why you might find that there's a disparity between this information. The other one was around, well, an increase from 57 to 65. That's Key Stage 4. That relates to our 4 secondary schools. We do have 31 primary schools, and I would suggest that applying the one measure and saying, well, we're great across the piece there is perhaps not what I would encourage you to do. So actually some of the substance of, and the devil is always in the detail in terms of Sharon's report, is that... Can
I just come in there? But it is public perception, it's
Yeah.
a public document, and that's our main concern.
Yeah. But I have taken the opportunity that where there is a potential good news story to actually record the fact. And youth service is probably an area where I'd like to grow some of the activity data. I mean, it didn't really give me a measure of how the service was performing, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But bringing the monitoring forward by a month didn't allow me the time to suggest any refinements to that. Part 5 then gives the director's commentary in terms of their State of the Nation report, in terms of how they feel their services in light of the financial information and the pressures that they're currently looking to address. And then part 6 gives you the links to the hub there in terms of where the detailed monitoring information is that's available to you if you have any questions on an ongoing basis.
Councillor Clark, about the deficit?
No, fine.
Sorry, Mark, I know I shouldn't because of your professional discipline, but I'm going to invite you to share your thoughts with us as you see them on the evidence that we've got and as you know it's emerging. What's your feel for the future look of school budgets? For example, if we were looking at this next year, and I say this not with any particular school or schools in mind, but if you skim across this paper and you see reference to recovery plans, you see references to redundancies. If you're also, as I am, a governor of 2 schools and you know that you're on standby to be available for upcoming dismissal panels, which will be handling some of this, what kind of glimpse of the future, either comforting or bleak, do you think you could give us? I'm not speaking about a specific school, and because there are several references to recovery plans. I'm speaking across pieces. I know there are problems in one specific school where I'm a governor. That's not my concern, actually. I'm thinking about the growing story across the piece and what will be, I know, growing concerns on the part of governors in several schools, though not necessarily, of course, those represented here.
I will give you a perspective. It's very much a personal perspective on that score because I have 2 children myself, and obviously the provision of education is important to me. You may remember the month 6 report that I did an analysis for you around benchmarking information and attainment. And at that time, I couldn't find a great correlation between the amount of money that you invested in a school and its attainment and results. So on the one hand, I'm reassured that when we're going into a period of poor financial climate, that actually that link isn't as direct as I had presumed it to be. I do think it is going to be increasingly challenging for head teachers to manage their aspirations and curriculum. I think we've got to be mindful of that, but we're already mindful of that in relation to other service delivery that we provide. And actually up to now, schools have not had that complexity to deal with. My experience of going into a couple of schools is that I'm very grateful for the opportunity to actually understand the pressures and their issues, because I don't often get that opportunity. I can see that actually at least part of their challenge is being able to realign their resources in a time frame that's consistent with an annual budget setting process. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge for them going forward. I think they will have to work, it's probably a bit trite to say it, but I will, probably more collegiately, derive economies of scale, work more collectively to use their resources across the piece. I think the approach whereby it's a school rather than regarded as a provision of education probably is a very traditional and perhaps a historic way of thinking about things, and that may mean that head teachers will have to think about things in a different way going forward. My experience of listening to some of the cluster debates and actually being involved in last year's head teachers conference was that they're quite up for that. I think actually the financial climate provides a very real experience as to why they have to do it, where previously it might have been a little more theoretical to them. But I don't think the future is without its challenge. But actually in understanding a bit better those challenges for those particular schools, I'm probably in a bit better position to help them going forward with it.
I thank you. I do appreciate the fact that you answered that, and I have no quibble with actually anything you've said. And at the risk of recognising again an individual school where I don't want to, I am aware that you are helping, as you've said, a couple of schools, and I do know that that is appreciated.
Ask a question. Sorry. Who's next? Sorry. Have I? Okay, Councillor Guppy.
Yeah.
Sorry, you come in first.
Yeah, no, it was regarding to CHEPS Comprehensive. Last year they went into a significant deficit, and we was given a narrative about that. But it's worsened, and I just wanted to know why it's worsened, because we had a recovery plan in place. So what's gone wrong? And my second question is on page 102, 4.3, just some clarity about what it refers to, the number of staff employed, full-time equivalents. What staff are they on about there? I'm a bit confused what that means.
Sorry, before you answer, Councillor Foley just wants to say
Sorry,
something.
having scrupulously and I almost thought successfully avoided naming any particular schools, now that Chepstow School has been named as a governor, I will need to declare an interest as a governor, a non-prejudicial one. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, would you like to answer?
Could I give you an update on Chepstow first? Then you could refer me to the paragraph on the sickness. I've been speaking with the governors and head teachers about Chepstow since about December. They have put together 5 proposals for recovery, only 2 of which are viable because they actually pay off the deficit in a timescale that is allowable. The intervening period, I would have liked to have sorted that earlier. The failure is mine, if you like, in not being able to get back and having a look at this, but it's only with regard to facilitating the budget setting and monitoring process rather than tardiness on their part. So the ball is in my court, if you like, to give a view to the LEA around the acceptability of that recovery plan. The complexity of those discussions are around the fact that, well, you're looking to withdraw resources or make the situation better without compromising curriculum, activity and potentially attainment. It would be fair to say that the size of the deficit means that they're purporting to recover in a longer time frame than is normal. That to me is a risk, because the longer something remains adverse, the more unknowns come over the hill there that stymie that. But actually I also have to recognise that, well, I want the recovery to be a sustainable one. So where we are with it at the moment is that the school has, and the governors are looking at a redundancy prospect and are starting to engage with the staff. I anticipate that probably before the week is out, I will have finished that exercise. I alluded to earlier it was a useful examination. I think it has given me a better understanding of the pressures and challenges that head teachers face. As to why that situation arose in the first place, there's no real panacea to that. It's a mixture of situations. Part of the report talks about birth rates and what the potential is on secondary schools, and as a national position that actually secondary school roles are down. You'll appreciate that funding in secondary schools is predicated to a large extent on the number of pupils on their roles, and the difficulty that I think head teachers have got is being able to cut their costs in a proportionate time frame to their income being cut. Also, they're entities that have the largest part of their costs is staffing, and it is not easy necessarily to reduce those staffing costs in a timely fashion.
Tracy, I'd like to ask you at the bottom of page 103, it's in Simon Birch's commentary, we note that the legal costs are still causing a problem and likely to carry on doing so, I presume. There is no way of overcoming that, is there, but since they've reduced the times. But the other thing that does concern me is the use of agency staff. Are they still a high number, or is that reducing at all?
Thanks for the question. We've been successful in employing the majority of vacant posts that we have now. We have 2 that have become vacant, and we're actively starting a campaign to recruit to those posts. So we have reduced the number of agency staff overall. However, there are 4 agency staff in post with children's services due to increased demand. I am putting a report together to bring to Cabinet further on into the year in a couple of months' time to look at how we can deal with that differently. There is no evidence that demand will drop, and in fact, as I'm sat here, demand is generally going up. And so, you know, the question I will be bringing to you all is whether we should look at going outside of establishment and saving money, but maybe giving 18-month contracts, for example, to have social workers that are committed to children's services in Monmouthshire, but also keeping the costs more manageable for the local authority. So we are looking at different ways of doing that, but we have seen a significant demand increase. And although the numbers that you've been seeing aren't in themselves that much higher, what we're seeing is complexity is significantly higher. So quite often in the past few years since I've been in Monmouthshire, we've seen kind of what we would call more ordinary safeguarding issues. So there's two people, two parents in a family. We know one of those parents is the perpetrator and we know who that parent is, and we can then safeguard that child quite easily within the family by the perpetrator leaving the family. What we've been finding more recently is that it could be either or parent in the family, so we have no way of knowing who the perpetrator is until police investigation, children's services investigation assessment has been completed. In those circumstances, we cannot allow the child to stay with those parents for obvious reasons, and we may then have to bring them out into foster care for that period until we can ascertain and whether that child could go back. In addition, we've also seen an increase in mother and baby placements. When a child is a first child born to a mother, we have little evidence. Even if the mother has got mental health problems or drug and alcohol issues, we don't have the evidence to say that parent can't parent. Whereas if it's the fourth or fifth child, you have a lot of evidence on previous children to take to court quite quickly. This means on a first child, we don't have that evidence and we have to prove that the mother can or can't parent, which means we're quite often having to fund mother and baby placements, for example, which as we've seen a significant cost increase on.
Anybody else have any? Yes, Councillor Cuppy.
Sorry, 15. On page 102,
Yeah,
4.3.
Sorry,
It's
the
number
table
of
under
staff,
4.3, yeah.
2014-15. 15 staff.
Those are the number of staff employed within the resources aspect
Within
of CYP.
Fine, okay.
Have any questions? No? Oh, Mark, that just leaves me. Thank you very much for your report and for your observations. Obviously, the school balances are a concern, the overall overriding concern. And I was going to ask you what else you're concerned about, but you know, you have answered very honestly. You've given an honest appraisal of the situation, so I don't need to do that. But thank you for that report. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Nikki, for coming as well. Right, the next item on the agenda is the last one, and it's about our work programme, which is page 105. I did have a comment to make here. The next potential meeting is a special one in March, which is going to look at home-to-school transport. And we've had advisory panels and meetings about this. And I have a concern, and I know others have a concern, that colleague Gwent are not, how can I put this, accountable at the moment regarding post-16 transport. Would you agree, Councillor Hackett-Payne?
I would agree, and I think in some ways it needs a lot more explanation. It's not as simple. Some colleague Gwent courses come with a transport attached, some don't, and it isn't an easy thing to get your head round. But I think there needs to be some explanation from colleague Gwent, and I think it's only right and proper that they actually do contribute to transport costs for courses that they offer that perhaps aren't offered at schools.
So that, thank you, Councillor Hackett-Payne. So that is a main concern for me, and I just suggested that perhaps colleague Gwent could be invited to the scrutiny committee to answer some questions about this, as you know, they don't seem to be contributing towards the transport costs. Councillor Clark.
Which particular individual in College Gwent will you invite?
Any person who Richard Cope is dealing with at the moment. I
Yes.
think it's Mr. Lacey. I'm not sure. I mean, Richard Cope would obviously, who's in charge of transport. Yes, he mentioned.
Because we want somebody here with the authority to give us answers that we can
Yes.
believe.
Yes, well, Mr. Lacey is supposed to be the man in charge of that, so I think we could invite him. Hazel, would you like to...
The work programme is as it stands, Chair. I think we're just not sure on the timescales, really, to discuss home-to-school transport. I spoke to Richard Cope a couple of weeks ago, and he said that the advisory group was meeting in February, which I believe they have, Chair, and how near they are to actually bringing forward some recommendations, I'm not sure, but I'm suggesting that we would probably need to deal with that item at a special meeting. So whether it would be before your 16th of April meeting or whether it's pushed back, we'll have to sort of liaise with Richard, and when we have something that we can bring for discussion, I think perhaps a special meeting for that item. And the only other one that the chair has flagged up to me, which we've put on the end of the work programme, is the adoption process, Pan Gwent. Some time ago, Vanessa Glenn spoke to us about the Pan Gwent adoption process, and I think the chair feels that it's appropriate that perhaps we have some sort of update on that.
Thank you. Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I invite other members to help me because I may be, as usual, in a place of my own on this. But let me, as they say, share with you an experience earlier this week at a governor's meeting where we had not only a 140-page unindexed PDF originating from the EAS, but more importantly now thinking about some of the contents. And I'm not necessarily quibbling about the content, but the principles. As a governing body at the school I was at, we received a number of policies, including, in particular, sex education. They'd all been done by the EAS, they'd all been consulted on with other EAS officers, but there was no reference to consultation with our officers. Whether or not that was appropriate, I leave for you to decide. And, more to the point, no apparent consultation with even a sample of heads of schools to see whether the things were workable. And lastly, and the real reason why I'm mentioning it today, not as far as I knew, subject to scrutiny by us. So I'm raising that experience. My question is, should we in some way at some stage be able to look at things like that? Because they go out in schools in our name, in effect, and schools we are responsible for. I'm not talking about the quality of the policies. I mean, there were no particular gripes there, although there were some minor details. But it was the principle that a lot of these things which guide aspects, important aspects of the work of our schools, as far as I can see, are not scrutinised, and they land on governors' chairs, as it were, without necessarily prior scrutiny that they might have expected.
I totally agree. We had a very, very long meeting at our last governors, and it was to go over all these policies. And the one we spent the least time on was the sex education, which I felt is in dire need of scrutiny. And also there are cultural issues as well, which need to be looked at. But we did spend quite a long time on policy about how governors should behave when they're on site, which I felt was quite inappropriate. But anyway, Councillor Hackett-Payne would like to...
Yes, I just wanted to, and I'm sure the committee are probably well aware of this, but all the school policies do go through quite a stringent process of, they go through the JAG, the Joint Advisory Group, I think it is, of unions, and HR from Monmouthshire County Council. And they don't get to schools until they've had union blessing as such. And I'm always led to believe that as far as changing any of the policies, you've then got to go back to get union approval. I might be wrong on that, but I think, do you sit on that, Maureen, as well?
I used to.
Mm.
I came off.
I know that sometimes things take months to go through this process, so they don't sort of just land at governors' feet. I think they've had quite a lot of process put into it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't come to select.
Okay, thank you. That's actually helpful. I don't know whether I'm reassured or terrified by some of what you just said, but to be serious, I'm grateful to know there is a process. Let me give you a couple of specific concerns about sex education policy to underline my point. There's a reference in there to the use of the proper use, of course, of outside people to help with the programme if required. But there's no expectation in the policy that the school should make any steps to see whether those particular people are actually trained and skilled to play whatever the role is. And I think that's worrying. By virtue of being a member of a particular profession, you're not necessarily trained, confident or competent. And actually in the sex education area, I would almost include some parts of the teaching profession in that as well. So I think these are serious points. They've been in the air for years. I've certainly been grappling with them one way or another for 40 odd years, and they're not terribly easy to resolve, but I think we should be seen. Now, the old Gwent, as it happened, used to have a pretty good guide to some of this kind of work in schools. I know it was good because I helped to write it, but it may well be, in all seriousness, that we need to just take a fresh look at some of this, and particularly that sensitive area. But I'm not going to say any more because I think people have taken the point.
Yes, thank you. I must just say at my particular meeting, the head teachers seemed to be quite satisfied with it, as did the governors in the end. But I do agree that I was left with a feeling that perhaps we didn't know everything about it and we should have more information prior to the meetings. So I don't know, perhaps scrutiny is a good idea. Hazel, what do you think about it? What do you think? Shall we? It's almost too late now, obviously, for this year, isn't it? What do you think, Casa?
I'm just thinking how it would fit into the process, because there obviously is, not with Select, but there is a point as a governor when that policy comes to you, if you feel that things should be added or taken away or changed, that's your point to speak up, in effect, and then report back. It would then have to go back to JAG for them to take on board what you have said. So there is that process then. And then how do you, because the whatever policy it is will be going out to all schools en masse. So if you then wanted it changed, you would have to then rescind all the policies en masse and then So I think that there needs to be something thought about so that the process is accepted.
Of course, only one school may complain about it, and then all the others may be in favour. So you have that problem as well. Yes.
Yeah, the major snag, if you like, with these reports that we get is this is the bog standard. If you don't like it, you've got to make your own. And then it's got to go back through the system. So no school's going to be daft enough not to accept it. It's as simple as that.
Yes, Councillor Farley.
Sorry to hog this. I know everyone wants to go. But there might be an opportunity. Some of these, as I understand, there is some kind of cycle of review. It may take place over a period of time. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute intervening in the policies that I happen to have seen last week. That's not the point. So my suggestion would actually be that when policies, I'm speaking generically now, come up for review, or they are going to be reworked and sent out to whatever, there may be a role for Select, and at least there should be the opportunity for us to decide, well, actually, we have an interest in this one. We're quite content with that one. School trips was another interesting policy, wasn't it? When you could actually organise and run and conclude a school trip in the time it would take to fill in the documents. So it might be something that we might want to ask for, that as things come under review, we're given the opportunity. I don't think I would ask for much more than that, to be honest.
Are you all in agreement with that? That
Perhaps maybe if we have a graph or of what actually the process is, so that we, you know, as you say, you can fit it in. It seems as though that there is a process, in which case, what's the cycle, what's coming up? It might be that we don't want all the policies, but there's some that we will need to hook out, which would make it a smarter approach.
Yes, I agree. I don't think we want all the policies. Some are very, very basic and don't need scrutinising, but there are important ones. Yeah. A timeline or a flow chart or something, yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Can that be?
A lot of the policies are time, so that they're, you know, 2012 to 17. So you'd know then, you know, you could look in 16 at that policy that was up for renewal in 17.
Okay, we'll take that forward. Thank you very much. Anything else we should be looking at? Do you think that's the Cabinet subject? We've done that, haven't we? I mean, we're aware of that. We're all scented. Okay, has anybody got anything else to say? No? Well, thank you very much for attending, and thank you, Councillor Jones. You're out in time. Thank you. Thank you all.